The students came from high schools across America and were on a 6-day visit to Washington. At the embassy, the students were shown a well-produced 20-minute slideshow on the kingdom. Then an embassy official answered questions. That was interrupted by an explanation of traditional Saudi costumes modeled by 6 student volunteers. Afterward, the students were asked for their impressions.
I was very surprised at how well the country is doing economically. I wasn't quite aware of how things were being handled or situations happening there, but I've been very pleased and surprised at how through all the oil and the economics of everything, it's a huge success over there.
If I had the opportunity to go to Saudi Arabia, I would, because it's much different than the U.S. And it shows more things, like religiously. They do more things that I'm interested in, and their dress it's more different than the U.S. So that's one thing that caught my attention more.
I think it was really informative to see how diversified the Saudi Arabian economy was, and all the new things that they were doing with science and technology, and how our two countries can further our relationship and go forward in the 21st century.
It made me more informed about it, which means I'm more comfortable about the culture. I think it's very interesting. It's not very black and white. There's a lot of grayish areas. I learned a lot about the women and the men in the culture, and I think it's really interesting what they do, the agriculture, and everything that's new about Saudi Arabia.
The students' trip was organized by the National Youth Leadership Forum, a group that organizes such events for high school students identified as future leaders.
Most of these students were nominated from members of their community, from their teachers, from their principals, families, just other mentors that they have in their communities that think they have leadership qualities that are necessary in order to be leaders of tomorrow.
And why do you bring them to a place like the Saudi Arabian embassy?
Well, part of our curriculum, we emphasize the importance of diplomacy and being able to come to the Saudi embassy here in Washington, D.C. and really see members of the diplomatic community at work and to understand the relationships they have with the United States and how they work together to achieve common goals is really important for us to try to understand and formulate national security strategy.
Embassy Information Officer Tariq Alagani, a Saudi who was raised in New York, says such visits are part of the embassy's efforts to dispel misconceptions Americans may have about life in Saudi Arabia.
Well, we want to generate awareness, understanding, goodwill about Saudi Arabia to the American public, so we get a lot of visit groups come visit us here. We do about 200 visits a year, and in a good year we have about 18,000 visitors come through our program here at the Embassy of Saudi Arabia in Washington, D.C.
The students had planned to visit U.S. government agencies, monuments, and museums, but a number of the visits had to be canceled due to the partial government shutdown this week after the politically divided U.S. Congress could not agree on a budget.
Every year, the embassy hosts about 200 visits of groups of students, civic organizations, scholars, and others. The purpose is to improve the kingdom's image in America and to foster better relations between the kingdom and the United States. Burton Bolek, KSA2, Washington.